we're here today in the studio, workshop, I don't know what you call it, Anne. Studio of Ann Carrington. And we're proud to announce that we are going to be holding a large exhibition of Ann's work, some of which you may be able to see in the background, but some of it certainly you will be able to see fairly shortly. Many of you may not be familiar with Ann's work, so if I can start by asking you, how did it all, obvious question, how did it all come about?
Well, when I was younger, I was always, I guess what you would say is good at art, good at drawing. And I think drawing is about observation, isn't it? So I was always kind of interested in kind of looking and making and building. And then eventually I took myself to art college, went to art college in Bourneville Art College in Birmingham. And then eventually found myself at the Royal College of Art studying sculpture.
Wow, okay. You said earlier that your some of Anne's work, there's a lot of stamps and coins, which is a little bit unusual. And you said earlier that you had, your father was a bit of an influence with
my father was a stamp and coin collector. And as a child, I found that terribly dull. And the house was full of stamps and coins on the wall in box sets, and then at Christmas and birthdays I'd get coins on necklaces, and I rebelled against that. I hated anything to do with stamps and coins, and it wasn't until I went to art college that I was allowed to like them when I left home. I gave myself that freedom, and I've actually, I've always secretly quite liked them, but in a different way. The value that I kind of attach to them is that, there's something really tiny that you're very familiar with, that you see every day, and yet you kind of don't notice them. They just become invisible. And I've always kind of enjoyed kind of blowing them up onto a bigger scale so that you can kind of look at the drawing in them and the mark making in them. And same with the coins. I have my favourite coins, and I enjoy kind of like just studying them and the way they've been made.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So how did you move from art college to, eventually ending up with these wonderful things? So how did that? Where did you get your big break then?
Well, when I left the Royal College of Art, I had quite a few galleries that wanted to show my work, and I had a very successful exhibition, which was kind of the talk of the town, lots of great reviews. And I thought, well, this is kind of easy. I just assumed this is how it was for an artist. And then, lo and behold, I was very much flavour of the month. And then I fell out with the gallery, couldn't find another gallery, right. And was literally the penniless artist. And I had squats. I couldn't afford to rent a studio. So with a group of other artists, we used to break into buildings or find a derelict building that you could get into, and then take them over, get the electric on, get everything working, and we'd live and work there. Most of the squats we had lasted 4 or 5 years, and we just carried on for about 15 years. We had 3 squats, one in King's Cross, one in Clerkenwell, and one in Islington, all with the same people. And some of them didn't have running water. We'd have to collect the water from the canal to flush the toilets and bring water in from outside so that we could kind of drink. But it was a very rich time because we were in central London. There was no pressure to make any money. And so the people that were there, the artists that were working there, we were just very creative.
Right.
And then after a while, I was sitting around waiting for Charles Saatchi to knock on the door, and it didn't happen. And very difficult in those days because, of course, there wasn't the internet. So if you're making artwork, the only way that you can communicate or show it to people was by having an art gallery. And back then, there were only 20 big art galleries in London, and if you couldn't get their attention, well, then it was very tough. So I had this seminal moment when I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this myself. I'm not going to rely on anybody else showing my work. I'm just going to show my own work. And that's what I've done ever since. And we had the squat, and the squat was like an old factory, and it had another factory attached to it that was empty. And I turned it into an art gallery. When I say an art gallery, I mean it was like there was holes in the roof, but I managed to get the walls painted, some false walls, and we got an old lighting rig from a gallery, and that we bought second-hand, and put that up. And then we started having exhibitions at the artists that were in the squat, and I had the first one. And then, I mean, it was funny because it was a squat. It was very difficult to invite people there or to get publicity. And the Telegraph magazine were all over it and wanted to do a double-page spread. I said, well, you can do that, but you can't print where the exhibition is. So there was like a printed telephone number. People would call up, say, where's the exhibition? And then, it was called Hidden, which is a kind of good name for it. But, a few people found it, a few people came, and some, it was written about, and then from that there was another exhibition, and it kind of just rolled on kind of very slowly, and with each exhibition you'd kind of get more interest. And then I moved to Margate, and then I got involved with a reality TV show. There'd been have I told you about
No,
this?
you haven't. No, you get that quiet.
There was an art collector called Bob Novogratz in America who'd been buying my work, and he was having a big launch of one of his hotels, and and I'd made some work for this hotel, and he said, you must come out to the private view. And I was like, I can't go all the way to New York just for one night. And he said, well, how about I send you and your husband flights? We'll pay for the flights, we'll put you up in a hotel, come out for a week. He said, on the understanding that you appear in my TV show. So I said, yeah, fine. I didn't think anything more of it, and I just thought, well, it'll just be one of those 10 a penny, programs, because there's lots of channels in America. And, but when I arrived, it was quite a big deal, and it was Bravo TV, and it was a fly on the wall, a bit like the Big Brother house. And they were filming all the comings and goings and the people that were buying the art, and so when they started filming, I was quite relaxed because I was kind of in a good place, because I was in New York, hadn't been away for a long time. I was kind of relaxed, and I was in most of the episodes, and I was filmed with my work. And then when we got back to the UK, the camera crew, the producer phoned up and said, can we carry on filming some episodes in Margate, London? They kept saying, I was going, no, Margate. They're going, no, Margate, London. I was going, whatever. Yeah. And so they came over and they filmed some episodes over here. And at the time, I had like a tiny little studio, so I hired a big studio to make it look like I was... So it kind of looked... So my studio fitted in with all the other things that they'd been filming. And when it went out, it was the second biggest show on Bravo that year, and then it was syndicated all over the world. And every time the show went out, I sold one piece, sometimes two pieces. And by the end of the first series, I had enough to buy this studio.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So this is a part of an old railway yard?
This is the old railway goods yard in Margate, yeah. And so this was the first unit that I purchased with the proceeds of the TV show.
How long ago was that?
That was about 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then Next Door, which was a mechanics, came up for sale a couple of years ago, and so now I've knocked through to Next Door because it was becoming, although it's a huge space, because of what I do, it's like welding, embroidering, using lots of different materials. Like the welding next to the embroidering was becoming problematic. We had a small fire.
Oh dear.
A big fire. And health and safety kind of kicked in. So. Okay,
well, talking about the materials, because there are other things from your illustrious past. Well, let's start with the United Nations that I read.
Yes.
It was something to do with the awareness for the refugee.
That's right. Well, that goes back again to the reality TV show, because, as I said, it was syndicated all over the world, and it was seen by millions of people, and was huge. And I don't think it was shown here, but I'm not saying I was a face, but I was approached. I was getting emails from all different kinds of people. And there was an email that sat in my inbox for a while, and it was like, the United Nations needs you. And I was like, if I open that up, that's going to be spam, and something's going to happen. And then eventually I opened it up, and it was for real. And it was the United Nations asking me to go to New York, and they wanted me to be an ambassador for the arts.
Oh, that's fantastic. Are you still an ambassador, or is that?
Well, I don't know. I haven't been told I'm not, but then I haven't done anything for them for a long time either, so probably not. But on my first trip, we went out to Egypt when Mubarak was still president, and basically my job was to, but rather than make a speech about, I think my first job was about human trafficking. And making people aware of human trafficking, especially in Egypt. So rather than make a speech, they wanted me to make artworks to draw attention to their causes, which they felt people would respond more to.
Right, okay. Well, the other thing that I found interesting was Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And we talked before about, I think it'll become obvious to people when they see your artworks that you do use lots of different materials and mediums. For me, I can remember people in Africa can make fantastic sculptures out of animal traps and all sorts of. Did that influence your approach?
Hugely. So when I was at my last year at the Royal College of Art, Eduardo Palozzi, who was still alive at the time, he was head of ceramics, but he used to make a lot of work in the sculpture department, and he used to teach me. And I loved his work, and he was quite interested in my work because I guess there were similarities in our approach. And he was curating an exhibition called Lost Magic Kingdoms at the Museum of Mankind. And he asked me along to the private view with lots of other students. And it blew my mind. It was incredible. And alongside his sculptures, he was showing sculptures from Africa, made from recycled materials, and India, I think, and lots of children's toys, like children that don't have access to manufactured toys, who make their own toys,
and things, from
bottle tops and wire and cigarette boxes, all kinds of like interesting materials. And I was like, I've got to go to Africa. I have to go to Africa. And I was kind of looking for different grants, and then the Commonwealth Fellowship came up every year, and each year they had the Commonwealth Fellowship for Sculpture, whereby they send the winning not contestants, that's the winning
entrant.
The winning entrant.
Yeah.
They do a swap, so you'll get someone from Canada swapping, a sculptor from Canada swapping with a sculptor from India, and then a Zimbabwean sculptor swapping with, So I think there were 6 sculptors, and we all swapped places. I went to Zimbabwe, someone from Zimbabwe went to Canada, and I had 6 months, paid on a grant.
Wonderful.
To go to Zimbabwe, and the idea was that I was to kind of travel and explore all the different kinds of recycling in Zimbabwe. And I chose Zimbabwe because it was relatively industrial, but it was near to South Africa. And I kind of felt I would find the kind of interesting items that I've been looking for. And the idea was that I was to be influenced, find some interesting sculptures and toys, and then kind of make my own artworks as a response to them, have an exhibition in Zimbabwe, and then bring back my findings, my photographs or whatever, and have an exhibition at the Commonwealth Institute. So, and that's what I did.
So how do all these kings and queens that we see on the wall? Why Elizabeth I and Charles I and
these came after I'd made a series of postage stamps, really, and I was thinking, well, the first one I made, I was looking at the Tennant's Super Brew cans, and I was looking at the kind of the royal blue and the royal hue, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to kind of make kind of like kings and queens, taken from, taking that as a starting point. Okay. And Tennant's Super Brew as well, because it's kind of the drinks of the lower, it's the lower life, so kind of it's low life kind of beer, isn't it? Is that how you get everyday inspiration? Yes, from different materials. Just looking at a material, just a tin can, the colour can just take you off somewhere. And then I thought wouldn't it be great to kind of elaborate and just laser cut the lace, and that started off a series of kings and queens.
Well, it worked.
And the busts are on a similar vein, because when I was at the Royal College of Art, we were very close to the Natural History Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum, and I used to go into the Victoria and Albert Museum and draw. And I always loved the bust, the plaster cast rooms, and I was always trying to think of a way of making like a contemporary version of that. And then recently, I don't know if you can see all the busts behind us.
I can. I did see
like
them
the
on
plaster
the floor.
busts.
Yes.
So I started collecting actual plaster cast busts from the V&A because they were 10 a penny at the time. They were kind of made for the Victorians. They could just buy them and take them home and put them in their living rooms. So you can still find them on eBay, or copies of them. So, and then I made a mould of one of the busts from fiberglass, and then into that I started stuffing like tin cans. And yeah, and they're called piss heads. And I've made a whole series of those.
And you've got something on permanent display at the V&A? You had something on
Yes,
display?
oh yeah, and now there's a piece on permanent display at the V&A, but not one of the busts.
That's a
one of
shame.
my, yeah, I know, it makes a nice story, nice cyclical story. One of my,
These
flower
are all
busts.
soft drinks, by the way.
I know, but they're much better colours. Artistic licence.
I've got to ask you, obviously, about the Queen's banner.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
So I made the banner for the Queen's barge, and it was for the procession down the Thames on the day of the Jubilee, and it was probably about 6 metres wide and 5 metres high, and I had to liaise with Prince Charles and come up with a design. Because obviously, I don't know if you know anything about it, but it showed the royal crest, and it was all depicted in gold buttons on red velvet. And but I wanted to change the crest, so I wanted to take away the shield and put a crown, because it was the coronation Jubilee. And in order to do that, I had to go to the College of Arms and had to get official approval, because obviously you're changing the royal crest for an official occasion. And then the work began. But it was quite interesting kind of making something for the Queen, because I think it's a given that you're going to do a good job. So most other big commissions like that, they're on your case, they're down here checking you're doing a good job. Yeah. But it was just like, take it away. I met Prince Charles once and I showed him the designs, and the only thing he said was, are they real gold buttons?
Yes, no comment.
The budget didn't stretch that far.
So what, out of all the pieces that you've made, do you have, and this somebody back at Spink asked, please ask Anne, do you have a piece that no matter how much you were offered for it, has some resonance with you, so you'd never sell it?
Yes, I made this piece that I called Ultima Thule, and when I made it, took a very, very long time to make, and the circumstances, how I came about making it were quite odd, and I felt very attached to it, and still feel really attached to it. And I exhibited at the Royal Academy, and it was not for sale.
Okay.
And basically, I had this dream. I don't normally kind of make artworks from dreams. I'm not that kind of artist, but I had this dream about this strange conjoined object, and it was like a planet, and with bubbles on it, and I thought, I've got to make that. And I thought, obviously, because I'm working with cutlery and using found materials, I kind of was trying to think about what I could use to make it. And then I thought, upturned ladles, that's exactly kind of what I'd seen in my dream. So I kind of built this kind of object and then put all these upturned ladles. And then I was kind of about halfway through it, and then there was this kind of like news flash, or there was this news article, and basically there was this object called Ultima Thule that NASA had photographed, and it was the most distant object ever photographed from Earth. And it was these two conjoined planets.
Oh.
And it was exactly the same shape as the sculpture that I'd made, and the object that I dreamt about, with the same kind of like surface on it.
They're meant to be.
And I'd been struggling with it a bit because it had taken so long to make. It was just taking forever just to find the upturned ladles, and it was like this jigsaw that was going together very, very slowly. And then kind of gave me the energy. I thought, no, okay, let's finish this piece. But I love it. It's just a really simple kind of abstract piece, but I'm really attached to it.
Okay.
And and there's some bouquets that I really like as well.
I think the bouquets are stunning.
I find some of those quite difficult to part with.
So do you have, in terms of materials, obviously used a lot, is there a material that you would like to use, or something completely? I mean, you must look ahead to different materials. I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm nearly always on a course because I like materials because I think materials tell stories. So you're looking at anything in a room, like a table. It has a history. It's manufactured in a certain country. It's got a certain patina. Somebody scratched their name in it. I don't know. Every object tells an interesting story, however dull it might appear to be. I've forgotten the question.
No, what if there's a material that you might want to try?
So often, I've worked with like wood and metal and fabric, and then more recently I was thinking I'd like to work with silver, so I did a silversmithing course, which was a bit of a disaster. I wasn't very good at that. And then glass, I was thinking I'd love to work with glass, and again, that's something that takes years to master, that craft. But it was quite good just to do the course to realise how difficult it was, and that actually sometimes you don't need to make everything yourself, but maybe you do need an understanding of how to do it. So although in the short time I was doing glass blowing, I didn't kind of really I didn't make a master, I wasn't a master glass blower by the end of it, but at least I have an understanding, and I can take the process to someone else and say I'd like to
do it.
Yeah.
I see you've done commissions for I read for handbags and the fashion industry. Was that a sort of one-off that just?
No, because I make artworks from other people's products. Quite often, the people who are associated with those products will approach me and ask me to work with them on commissions or collaborations. So like Levi's have approached me to kind of come up with ideas for them, and then Lulu Guinness approached me if I'd make some handbags with her, design some handbags with her using the image with the buttons and the Queen. Paul Smith I've worked with on fabrics and bags. I think there's other collaborations as well, but I can't remember them offhand.
Well, we came to you originally because obviously we do coins and stamps, and that was the point at which somebody said, "Well, these are fantastic. Let's see if we can contact Anne." With the coins and the stamps, why do you think Spinks is a good place to have an exhibition? Because you're not just putting stamps.
No, I think the starting point is our shared enthusiasm for stamps and coins.
Well, yours is not quite so
I think there's something kind of quite perverse. We're coming from such a different angles, whereas yours are kind of tiny and precious. Mine are big and precious, let's say. They're on a much bigger scale, and I think it's just kind of looking at something from a different angle, isn't it?
Yes.
And coming from a fresh point of view.
Yeah.
A different kind of appreciation.
So who, obvious question really, what sort of people buy your works?
Well, lots of different people, mainly America. I sell a lot to America, so probably like kind of 75% of the sales go to America, a few to Saudi Arabia, very few in the UK, probably about 10%. Art collectors, kind of investors, quite a lot of like people that like money, but they like to have like a giant pound coin or a huge American dollar on their wall.
So in terms of investment,
yes.
So if we leave the creative bit aside for a moment, but have your works risen in price from?
Yes, they have. Yes, I mean you barely notice it yourself.
Well, you're not going to tell me they dropped, but I mean I just.
No, of course they have, because when I first started out selling things for like 100, 200, 300 pounds, I was pleased, and now obviously they're a lot more than that. So, and every year I increase the prices because I can't keep up. I don't really keep up with demand, but I can't make as many artworks as people want. So
really,
yeah. So I can remember I'd sold a piece to somebody who taught business at Harvard Business School, and I was out in America and I was meeting him when we were installing the piece in his house, and I was very stressed. And he was asking, he's saying, why, what are you stressed about? I said, because I've just got, I'm in a really good position. I've got all these commissions, but I can't make all the work. I'm really exhausted. And he was just like, well, it's obvious. You make less and you make things more expensive. Mm. So, and that's what happens every year. There's I probably make less work, but and then the prices just go up a little bit, because that's the only way you can cope with it, really.
So your stamps, you in order to feature what it looks like a matching portrait that you were using, but in order to feature the Queen's head, do you have to have some permission?
Well, I have discovered that, yes. So the first stamp that I made was using the Machin Queen image, and my son had chicken pox, and we couldn't go inside anywhere, so I was walking him up around the streets. We lived in London at the time, up and down the streets of around Trafalgar Square, and they have all those stamp shops.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of the street, just off Trafalgar Square, and my son just stopped and looked in the window. He was tiny, and he was pointing at the stamps, going, "Let's go in, let's go in." We can't go in, And then I looked in the window, and there was this beautiful Machin stamp with all the engraved lines, I think it's a 1970s stamp. And so I dropped him off at home, and then I went back and went in to buy the stamp. And they were trying to sell it me as a collector. I was going, no, it's just a beautiful thing. And then I blew it up on a photocopier, just so that I could look at the lines and how the face had been built up. And that was the first stamp that I used. Oh yes, so the question was about how I got permission. So then I made a stamp. Basically, I blew it up onto a really big scale. I'd had this commission to make a piece for Jacob Rothschild, and he wanted the portrait of the Queen for her 80th birthday.
Oh,
and so I blew up this Queen's head onto a really large stamp, onto a really large scale. And where the printing dots would have been, it looked like buttons, and so I was thinking pearly kings and queens, that's how I'm going to make it. I'm going to make a postage stamp from pearly buttons. And then I made quite a few. I made lots of different versions of it. And then I came to the attention of Royal Mail, and a big envelope with a big red seal dropped through. I thought it looked like I was going to be invited to the palace for something nice, but it was quite the opposite. And it was cease and desist.
Was it?
Yeah. And it hadn't crossed my mind that it was illegal to reproduce a postage stamp. And it's not illegal in America; they're public property, and you can do, but in England it is. So I thought, what do I do? And I thought, well, rather than make a big palaver and get a lawyer, and I'll just go up there. And it was in the summer. I just went up there in my shorts and flip flops, just really but I was a bit stressed inside. But I just wanted to keep it low key. And when I got there was a big long table full of philatelic lawyers, and they were like, how many of these have you made? And at the time I'd made 7 or 8, and they had evidence of each one. And I was look, I really had no idea that this was illegal, but isn't there some way we can work together? And so eventually I got a license from Royal Mail to produce stamp images featuring the Queen.
Wonderful.
And coins. So
coins.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And then I have to pay them a percentage of every artwork that's sold. But it's so we have this relationship, which is very good. And since then, they've approached me to actually design things. So it's really turned around on its head.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So how many of the works that we see here are commissioned, and how many do you just make because you want to make them?
Nearly all the works in this room are what they call art for art's sake. It's still a thing.
So you can still make things that you really want to make. Yeah.
I know. Every piece just starts off with a raw idea, an overheard conversation, something I might have in my sketchbook, or a pile of materials that suggest something, and then what will happen more often is somebody will see something like this, and then they might say, can you kind of have Alexander the Great, or and sometimes it's something that interests me, and sometimes it isn't. With the coins, it normally interests me because it's usually a new coin to look at and a new coin to blow up onto a big scale.
So if we had, obviously, if one of our clients who has a great collection wanted a particular coin or stamp, you know, treated in this manner, they can commission things like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've just spent the weekend with a client from Greece, and he commissioned 2 ancient Greek coins, which they like in bronze. So we kind of worked on the colour together as well. Yeah. So each one kind of is unique, and they're all hammered from pewter. So how I make the coins is I can be given I have to like the coin. If I don't like it, then it's not of any interest. But most coins, if it's somebody's favourite, usually it's kind of attractive to me as well. So I'll draw the coin on a large scale, and then kind of like if you think about it, most coins are quite, if you blow them up, they're quite dull. It's just like a pencil outline, and then you just have to flesh out all the kind of three-dimensionality. Like if you see the top coin there, it's not like a flat face. It's got those lines which I borrowed from Machin. That's how I learned how to do it. Just like looking at the Machin stamps and how you can build up light and shade just with lines. You don't notice the lines actually travelling over the face.
No.
The eye doesn't see it.
No.
So that's the most difficult bit, is kind of working out the face and the contours and getting a likeness to Marianne, to Liberty, you know, whoever it is, or the Queen, because otherwise it just falls flat if there's no likeness. And then I project, so I draw out the image, and then I'll project it onto some sheet pewter, and then draw it out.
Oh, I remember seeing that before.
And then it's called repousse, you know, when you hammer from one side and then it pops out the other, and then you spin it round, and voila. Yeah.
And it's fabulous to be here, and it's nice to see you again.
Nice to meet you.
We look forward to the exhibition in September, which I'm sure will be fantastic. Encourage people to come and look and enjoy your art. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.